and welcome to another episode of PodcastDX, the show that brings you interviews with people just like you, whose lives were forever changed by a medical diagnosis. I'm Lita. Ron's not here with us in the studio today.
And I'm Jean Marie.
Collectively, we're the hosts of PodcastDX. On today's show, we will discuss HIV and AIDS. We have the pleasure of speaking today with D-Rek. When he's not holding toy drives for local children's hospitals, you can find D-Rek spinning vinyl in the clubs. D-Rek is joining us from the state of wisdom, justice, and moderation.
D-Rek must be in a Georgia state of mind?
Right. Hi, D-Rek.
Hi, D-Rek.
Hi, everybody.
D-Rek, could you tell us what is HIV and how does it develop into AIDS?
HIV is an acronym for Human Immunodeficiency Virus, and AIDS is an acronym for Acquired Immunodeficiency Syndrome. HIV is a virus that causes AIDS and interferes with the body's ability to fight the infections that can occur after the initial infection.
Okay, all right. And D-Rek, could you tell us what led to your diagnosis?
Originally, it was heart surgery and a lot of blood transfusions in 1985. And for 16 years, I went through life with chronic pneumonia and different medical issues, and I wasn't growing. And I finally got to a doctor that explained to me that my heart issues had no effect on my height or weight. And that led to me being sent to get growth hormones and different things. And that helped me gain height and weight. But I wasn't on track where I was supposed to be with what they were doing. And that led me to an immunologist who found the HIV virus. And I was diagnosed with AIDS.
Wow. That's quite a bit to take in as a 16-year-old, kid, right?
Yeah, it was pretty devastating because at that age you're just starting to figure out who you are and what you want to be in the world. And the diagnosis pretty much took a sledgehammer to anything that I thought I was or wanted to be.
Oh, I'm sorry. I think that with any sexually transmitted infection, preventing transmission is a key. Abstinence is a sure way to avoid any sexually transmitted disease, but in your case, it was
transfusion,
a blood transfusion. Before,
but now they test them,
right? And it's almost 100% effective, but not a whole 100%. But definitely, protected sex is a good way to prevent sexually transmitted diseases, and this provides a physical barrier between the virus or bacteria. And this way it can't cross from one person to the next.
Right.
And we did have a previous interview with someone from Louis, and Louis makes an internal condom that can be used by both men and women, or there are also standard condoms on the market.
Right. D-Rek, could you please explain the stages of HIV and AIDS?
Right. The CDC describes it this way. When people get HIV and don't receive treatment, they will typically progress through 3 stages of the disease.
Okay.
Medicine to treatment of HIV, which is the treatment is known as antiretroviral therapy, also known as ART. And it helps people at all stages of the disease.
Okay.
If taken the right way every day, the treatment can slow or prevent progression from one stage to the next.
Okay.
Treatment can also dramatically reduce the chances of transmitting HIV.
Oh, I didn't know that. Okay.
So stage 1 is acute HIV infection, which will occur within 2 to 4 weeks after infection with HIV. And people may experience flu-like symptoms. So a lot of people don't recognize that maybe they should go to a doctor and ask for an HIV test once they start to experience these type of symptoms because they are so closely correlated with something very common, which may last for a few weeks. So flu symptoms for a few weeks for a majority of the population is not something uncommon.
Right.
And we're just now coming out of flu season. So
Mm-hmm.
this is the body's natural response to the infection. When people have acute HIV infection, they have a large amount of the virus in their blood and are very contagious. But people with acute infections are often unaware they're infected because they may not feel sick right away or at all.
So until the symptoms come out, they don't really know.
Or until they get tested.
Yeah. And then you have stage 2, which is the clinical latency, HIV inactivity or dormancy stage. This period is sometimes called asymptomatic. HIV infection or chronic HIV infection during this phase, HIV is still active but reproducing at very, very low levels. People may not have any symptoms or get sick during this time. For people who aren't taking medicine to treat their HIV, this period can last a decade or longer, but some may progress through these phases faster.
Okay.
People who are taking ART the right way every day may be in the stage for several decades. It's important to remember that you can still transmit HIV to others during this phase. Although people who are on antiretroviral therapy or ART and stay virally suppressed are much less likely to transmit HIV than people who are not virally suppressed.
Okay.
Antiviral therapy keeps HIV from making copies of itself in the bloodstream.
Got it.
And the third stage is acquired immunodeficiency syndrome, also known as AIDS, which is what I was diagnosed with. AIDS is the most severe phase of HIV infection. CD4 cells or T cells are the generals of the human immune system. These are the cells that send signals to activate a person's immune response. When they detect intruders like viruses, bacteria, people are diagnosed with AIDS when the CD4 cell count drops below 200 cells per milliliter. And they often develop many opportunistic infections. And that's what I was experiencing through childhood with pneumonias and bronchitis continually throughout the years.
Okay. Well, thank you, D-Rek. I mean, that's a lot of information to take in. And you've literally written the book when it comes to, you actually wrote a book and it goes in detail about all of this information. So we'll make sure that we include a link for that so that everybody can go and pick that up, which we did recently. It's also important to remember, as you said, with you want to end the stigma, that anyone can contract HIV, no matter what your race, your religion, or your sexual orientation happens to be. Everybody can get HIV.
Absolutely correct. It's a disease like the flu or pneumonia. I mean, it doesn't care who gets infected.
Right.
So, D-Rek, would you like to share with our listeners what therapies you have had and how they have affected your day-to-day life?
When I was originally diagnosed, I was on 22 different medications a day.
Whoa.
Wow.
And I was 7, 11, 3, and 11. That was my med schedule every day. And that lasted, I want to say, for about 3 years.
Oh, wow.
And this was back in 2001. Nobody has to worry about that amount of medication anymore. In fact, a lot of newly diagnosed patients can get a 1 pill a day.
Oh,
wow.
things have changed, huh?
Yeah, I mean, a lot of medical advancements have happened since I was diagnosed. But that's the way it affected. I mean, that was a big impact right off the bat, was just the amount of meds.
Did that mess with your stomach and stuff?
Thankfully not. I didn't really have a lot of the stomach issues that they're commonly reported, but I didn't really have.
Well, that's good.
I don't have any problems with stomach issues with the meds.
That's good.
I was just going to ask, is there anything in particular that you wish you would have known early on in your diagnosis? The goal of our show is to try to help others who might have just recently received a diagnosis of some type. But, I mean, you were very, very young. It must have been a lot to take in.
It was extremely a lot to take in. And The main thing I wish I would have known was I made things way more complicated than they needed to be.
Okay.
And I needed to just let go of my sense of being in control. Anybody that knows me knows that I'm a control freak.
Okay.
That's just me by nature. I was super vigilant with meds and everything, and it would make you go kind of crazy.
Mm-hmm.
And the biggest thing is just to relax and to not let the moments when I would have to take the meds bother me the rest of the day.
Right.
And it was rough early days because, I mean, there was maybe 4 or 5 hours in between,
Right.
Taking meds. And that time goes by really, really fast. And so, I mean, the biggest thing is just to relax, take it day by day, and don't be consumed with the idea that you have to take medication. I mean, majority of the population, when you think about it, take some form of medication every day.
Oh,
Right,
yeah.
right, right.
So it's nothing to be ashamed of.
Of course. Are there any tips or advice that you have for loved ones or friends of somebody? Let's say somebody was just diagnosed. You're a friend of that person. Is there any advice that you would give to the friends or the loved ones so that they can know how to be helpful or supportive to their friend now that they have this diagnosis?
Just don't change the way you react or act around somebody that has just been diagnosed. And I live in the South, so I deal with a lot of the stigma issues. There's a lot of, you would think it's still 92 here, the way the mentality is. And when I was diagnosed, there was a lot of murmurs, like when I would go out to eat and stuff, like if I had a cup or silverware, people would get worried about it. And the virus is not transmitted that way.
Right.
Casual contact is completely fine. And if you have any questions about the virus, ask the person.
Right.
They're spending hours upon hours with their doctors. They're getting all the best information you can ever get.
Okay.
And if you want to know the facts, they can get whatever kind of book, pamphlet, wherever you want to go. And we all have the ability to go to the CDC website and look it up yourself.
Sure.
Sure. People
Absolutely.
just don't take the time.
Well, in particular, do you use any social media to help educate others and spread awareness? Or, do you
like Facebook groups or Facebook
right.
pages?
And like you said, you have the End the Stigma, which is a great way to look at things because anyone can get HIV. But what else do you have out there or have any recommendations? I'm sorry, I'm mumbling.
I've got there's the Facebook page is a great resource for people. It's a real good way to get in contact with me.
Okay.
And I've got Instagram account. If you go to my website, all the web links are at the top, so you can keep up with the Instagram. The Instagram's a lot of motivational pictures, a lot of inspirational stuff every day. So that always is going, and then I'm working with different organizations and stuff through Instagram and Facebook right now, helping to all work together. But social media is really the main way I do a lot of my advocacy. And I also go out when the opportunity presents itself into the community and go and speak in schools, colleges.
Well, that's very good.
I've got the book.
Right. That's really great that you do that. Just to take your personal time to do this in order to bring the information to others, I think that's great.
Thank you so much. Yeah, it was just, I realized how impactful my story was, because when people hear HIV and AIDS, it's still automatically thought of as a gay disease. And I kind of throw that idea on its head. Mm-hmm. Because I got it from blood transfusion. I'm heterosexual male, and it takes away all of any predisposed ideas somebody had. It just stops them dead in their tracks.
Of course.
And they can't help but sit and think about it and just kind of, you have to be able to create that kind of shock moment, and not in a bad way, but just in a moment to slow somebody down to make them think.
Right. And it's like we said before, it's like a cold. Anybody can get it. And, prevention is important.
Right.
And treatment is important. But, yeah, anyone can get it.
And I'm glad they are doing better at blood testing. I mean, it's not 100%, but they're doing better.
Yes.
My dad got
hepatitis
C during a blood transfusion.
With an open heart surgery
for his
as
open
well.
heart, yeah. Mm-hmm. And they were testing at the time, but he still got it. So, yeah.
Well, I think it was the year before they started testing.
Oh, was it?
Yep.
Oh, okay.
Yep. And we understand that you have been listed as one of the top 10 sexiest heterosexuals with HIV and AIDS.
Oh.
Yeah.
There you go.
Yeah, that was one of the first publications when I first started doing the activism thing. That was one of the first things that came out when I was really trying to get my name out there.
Sure.
Mm-hmm.
That was published, because there are not very many heterosexual men that speak on this topic. There's just not, and there needs to be a lot more.
Sure.
And the heterosexual community is vastly overlooked when it comes to statistics and many things. And when you look at the statistics, a lot of times heterosexual male will not even be listed.
Oh, wow.
We're thrown into the category at the bottom that just says other.
Oh, geez.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
That's a real shame. I want to make sure that our listeners know how exactly to reach you. Can you tell us what is your website address?
It's my first and last name.com.
Oh, okay.
I luckily didn't have any competition to get that name.
Okay, so it's D-Rek, D-E-R-E-K, and the last name?
CANAS.
CANAS? Okay.
Yes, ma'am.
Yep.
All right.
And your book is Operation D-Rek, and we picked up our copy on Kindle through Amazon.com. And it's a great read. And actually, that inspired us to ask you to come on another episode and talk about your heart condition and everything you've been through there, because that's pretty intense.
Right. We'll do that in May.
Absolutely.
Okay.
If you're available in May, because I know you're a very, very busy person. Always
advocating.
Yeah, advocating and raising money for charities and
spinning vinyl.
And collecting toys for kids in hospitals, because you know what it's like to be there. Is there anything we forgot to mention, D-Rek? We have some time left. If you would like to, we'd like to open up the mic to you, and anything you'd like to add.
And I can't think of anything unless you guys want some funny stories or some stuff. There's some stuff from the book. I mean, we could talk about a couple things from the book.
Sure, go ahead.
Sure.
Like the first night, I don't know, I'm pretty sure this is in the book. The first night I was in Gainesville, right after I'd been diagnosed. It was about 6 months after I'd been diagnosed. The nurse coming in to do the IV, I can't remember if it's in the book. I don't know if you read that part. But I didn't realize when I went down there that it's at a college campus that the majority of the nurses are young girls. They're 18 and up. They're 18, 19, 20-year-old nurses.
Yeah, I know what you're about to allude to. Yep.
So I'm in the room, and the nurse comes in to do the IV, and she's a young girl. Mm-hmm. And she explained to me she's training someone, and the training nurse was even younger. Mm-hmm. And I have really good veins. I don't know why I got lucky enough to have decent veins. Mm-hmm. I guess because life knew I was going to be the guy that got stuck all the time with diabetes. Oh. But anyway, the girl goes to put the IV in. I let the trainee do it. And I'm sitting talking, we're laughing, joking, and I hear a pop. And anybody that's ever put an IV in knows that it means that you just went through somebody's vein.
Right, you just blew it.
And so I look down and I see blood coming down my arm, and this girl just freezes.
Oh.
Because she's training.
Oh.
She's training. And blood is just pulling down my arm.
Oh, my goodness.
And she's grabbing towels. And I went through the first towel. It soaked. I dropped it on the ground. Second one, soaked it, dropped to the ground. Third one, soaked, dropped it.
Jeez.
And then I realized that there's a tourniquet that's on my arm. That's why I'm soaking through these towels so fast.
Oh.
So I had to lean over and grab the tourniquet with my teeth and pull the tourniquet off. And then the main nurse came running in with a stack of gauze and put them on my arm, and we're taping. It was crazy.
Oh my gosh.
And that was my first hospital stay after being diagnosed with HIV.
Oh.
And that's one of the funniest stories to me because it started at a very chaotic time.
Yeah.
And I think I was there for 2 weeks.
Oh, wow.
I probably spent maybe 40 hours in my own room because they were running me from every corner of the hospital they could every day.
Okay.
Every kind of test.
Wow.
Because every test was pretty much saying I shouldn't be there, that I should be dead.
Wow.
Well,
and so that's the whole point of me doing what I do is you can do whatever you set your mind to. I'm statistically should not be here. When you put everything together on paper, you shouldn't survive an open heart surgery at 3 months of age, multiple blood transfusions, the virus untreated for 16 years, multiple pacemaker replacements. I mean, it's insane when it's all written out. You read it, it's completely unbelievable.
You beat the odds.
It sounds like a Hollywood movie because the odds of surviving that are so minuscule. And that's the point of the book. It's like, nobody can, if you set your mind to, I'm going to fight this and I'm not going to lay down and just let it kill me, you can make it through way more than you ever imagined.
Well, and what surprised me the most was when you went in for a checkup and they checked your pacemaker and your heart rate was something around 30 beats a minute. And the pacemaker battery had died, and then they told you that it was going to be a couple weeks before you got a new one. I mean, that shocked me to no end.
Oh, yeah, my mom will never let me live that down.
No.
And because she was livid when I made that phone call.
Oh, yeah.
Because she did not go with me on that trip, but my grandparents went with me because it was a 3-hour drive to get down there. So we're down there, and I mean, it was just a regular checkup. We'll be back home later that afternoon. And then they're telling me all this, and the cardiologist, who I knew very well, comes in, and he told me everything, and he said, "Well, we'll see you in about 2 weeks. We got to order the pacemaker. We got to get the OR. There's a lot of stuff that's got to happen."
I'm surprised you were walking and talking and able to function.
Yeah, that's very low.
Yeah.
Well, they explained it to me as I had never experienced life consciously without having the pacemaker. So that was the reason I thought I was feeling amazing. I thought I was doing great.
Wow.
I was working out, running. I was more active than I had ever been leading up to that appointment.
Oh, God.
And it was because it was the first time my heart wasn't regulated by a machine, even though it was essentially destroying itself, because your heart's like a balloon. So when your heart rate gets that low, you're overfilling the balloon to even keep yourself awake.
Right.
And the heart's having to bring in so much more blood when it's beating that slow. And then to be told, you're good for 2 weeks, going home. My mom was not happy at all.
Oh, I'm sure.
My doctor got a very not nice phone call from her as I was on the road home. And he called and told me about it. And he said, "Please don't give your mother my number anymore."
Right back.
She said, "I tried to explain that you'll be fine."
Yes.
I mean, there was no amount of chill out, relax for my mom for those 2 weeks.
But it is great that you have family there to support you, and it sounds like they've been an integral part of getting you through this.
Yeah, I mean, family's been a really big help with everything.
And I understand you're also an advocate for Coachella?
Yes, I'm a social media advocate for them. So whenever they post, I share all their stuff, and I tag different things for myself, Coachella, and we help each other back and forth.
Okay.
Very good partnership I have with them.
That's great. Well, D-Rek, I'd like to thank you ever so much for being with us today and taking the time out of your day to join us.
Yes, and thank you, D-Rek. It's been a pleasure spending time with you, and we will be talking with you again in about a month or so about the heart condition that you've had since birth.
Yeah, and that incredible journey.
Right, that'll be a heck of an interview. I know that the information that you shared today will be invaluable to others.
And thank you so much for having me and giving me this opportunity. I'm very thankful for that.
No problem. If our listeners have any questions or comments related to today's show, they can contact us at PodcastDX@yahoo.com, through our website, PodcastDX.com, on Facebook, Twitter, Pinterest, or Instagram.
And if you have a moment to spare, please give us a 5-star review wherever you get your podcast. As always, please keep in mind that this podcast is not intended to be a substitute for professional medical advice, diagnosis, or treatment. And as always, please seek the advice of your physician or other qualified healthcare provider with any questions you may have regarding a medical condition or treatment and before undertaking a new healthcare regime. And never disregard professional medical advice or delay in seeking it because of something you've heard on this podcast.
Till next week.